Hey, welcome to my, to my studio. I want to do this video face-to-face, or at least face-to-camera, because this is a more personal video. It's less about 12-tone and more about Corey, and Corey has some stuff that I want to say. So you may have noticed that recently I have started to do sponsorships on a lot of my videos. Not all of them, but most of them, and I'm also running a Patreon page, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with that. Because I think fundamentally there's a bit of a moral question here. Like, is it fair, is it ethical for me to ask people to crowdfund my vision and then turn around and sell ad space on that vision, on those products that you helped make, to corporations? Is that okay? And I probably should have made this video a long time ago, but I sort of wanted to figure out what I thought first, and this has been something I've been thinking about a lot over the last couple months, and I wanted to get my head straight before I came to you. So before I get into what I think, though, I want to talk a bit about how I got there, because if you've watched my videos, you know that that's very much how my brain works. And I just wanted to communicate a little bit of my thinking on the topic. So the first thing I want to be clear about is that this wasn't my plan. When I made the Going Full-Time video, I was intending to make most of my money from Patreon. I had done some sponsorships with Skillshare before then, and obviously I had some ad revenue, but mostly I was planning to make money off Patreon. But once that video went out, a good friend of mine, Anais Dawson from Draw Curiosity, who's a fantastic creator and absolutely wonderful human being, sent that video to her manager, and the manager reached out and asked if I wanted to work with him and do some more sponsorships. And I went back and forth a lot. I talked with my brother and tried to figure out how I felt, and in the end we decided that we were going to. And we're totally fine with that. That's not a regret or anything. I'm just trying to explain events. Basically, the important point I'm trying to make here is that when I made the Going Full-Time video, I was honestly trying to convey my situation as accurately as possible. It's just that things changed. And the other thing I want to talk about is sponsorships as a model, because I'm honestly, I'm iffy on it. I'm not super comfortable with the idea. Not because I don't like my sponsors. I put a lot of effort into making sure the people I work with are companies and products that I think are good. And my management company also does their own vetting, so when I endorse a product, I'm fairly comfortable that it's a good product to endorse. But in the end, I have no background in sales, and it's also really stressful to have additional data to track and more conversion stuff that I have to worry about, because my job is random enough already. But the truth is that when working in online video, especially working in education, sponsors are an important part of the landscape. They pay better than anyone else, and that makes it a lot easier to do this as a full-time job. But on the flip side, while they do pay well, Patreon is still an important part of my income. It's bad business to disclose your rates, so I can't tell you exactly what they're paying me, but it's not like I'm making tens of thousands of dollars or anything. It's just enough to make a living. Anyway, as a side note, I was at PatreonCon last week, and I think it really helped put into perspective why I'm a little uncomfortable with Patreon as a model as well. You see, there were a lot of talks about best practices and how to optimize Patreon, and a lot of them centered around this idea of conversion. A point that came up repeatedly was this idea that statistically, if someone pledges to Patreon, they're most likely to unpledge within the first 3 months. So best practices says that you want to craft this new user experience to try and get them through that period to the point where they become what's called a habitual supporter, which is one of the grossest combinations of words I've ever heard. I mean, look, let's be honest. If I have to work that hard over the course of months to convince you want to give me money, you don't want to give me money. And that's fine. You don't owe me money. I think that's a really important point. And what makes Patreon good is that it allows people to offer that money, but it doesn't force it. I'm choosing to put my work out there for free. That's my choice, and no one owes me money for it. The only reason that I would ever want anyone to pledge on Patreon is because they think my work is valuable and important. I don't want to have to convince you of that, because if I do, you don't believe it. But again, much like sponsors, Patreon is an important part of the landscape, and there's not really much I can do about that. Side note, this is all unscripted. I have a vague idea of what I'm trying to say, but if it gets a little weird, it's because I didn't plan it. Anyway, the point of this all is that in the end, I don't think it's my decision whether it's okay for me to do a sponsorship and Patreon at the same time. I think that's a choice for my patrons. So if you're supporting me and you don't think that's okay, I don't mind if you stop. But the truth is, in order to do this full time, I need both. I wish I lived in a world where I could just put my work out there for free and then money would just appear so I could pay my bills, but I don't. But again, that doesn't mean you owe me any payment, it just means I need to get paid. But I also think it's important to carve out space for those patrons, and one thing I've done on that front is that I'm not selling ad space on the song analyses. Those are paid for by patrons, and I think they should be kept for them. There is one exception to that in the pipeline right now. An opportunity came up that was too good to say no to. I can't say more about it right now, but I hope when it comes out you'll understand why it was something that I had to do. Seriously, it's really exciting. You'll see. I have been thinking, though, about other ways to try and make being a patron more meaningful. And one thing I've been considering is switching from the current suggestion box model, where people just tell me songs they want to see and I pick one, to a poll-based model, which gives more people access. Effectively, right now, if you suggest a song that doesn't work for whatever reason, or I just don't pick it, you have no real influence over what I wind up analyzing. I mean, to be clear, I do keep a full list of every song that has ever been suggested by patrons, and I review the entire thing. But that list is over 200 songs long at this point, and it's not likely that any particular song on it will ever get analyzed. Whereas with polls, anyone who votes has at least some influence on what happens. I don't know, I haven't settled on that, it's just something I've been thinking about. If you're a patron, feel free to let me know your thoughts. Beyond that, I've been a little hesitant to do many sort of patron rewards because I don't like the idea of putting my work behind a paywall. Again, I think it's important that what I do is freely available. We've tried a couple things. We have the Elephant of the Month Club, which I've been very happy with so far, but if I'm putting a lot of effort into something, especially if it's going to be educational, I don't want that to be behind a paywall, and that's hard to do if I'm focused on fulfilling patron rewards. Wow, I'm terrible at talking. This is why I'm usually behind a microphone. But I do want to hear from patrons. I want to figure out how to make this work in a way that feels fair and ethical to you, but also allows me to make the money I need to make in order to continue doing this work full time. What can I do that makes Patreon worthwhile for you? And if you're not currently a patron, what would make you want to be one? I think in the end, the conclusion I've come to is that it is okay for me to have both these revenue streams, but I need to do it in a way that's clear and open and communicative. I don't know, maybe that even includes telling patrons what I'm making for sponsorships. I'm not entirely sure I can do that, because again, disclosing your rates is bad business and I don't want my manager to stab me. He wouldn't. He's a great guy, and I'm not just saying that because he might watch this. But still, the point is that's not just my information to give. If that would make you more comfortable, though, let me know, and if a lot of people want it, I'll look into it. But in the end, my main goal is to make 12-tone viable long term. That's what's important to me, and that's why I feel like I have to do these sponsorships at this point in my career. I don't know what the future holds, but I hope you'll be along for the ride, whether it's on Patreon or just YouTube. Honestly, the best thing you could do to support 12-tone has always just been to share our videos. That's what makes this job work. And if you want to support us on Patreon, we would deeply appreciate that, but if not, that's fine too. I'm still trying to figure out how best to do this. It's a career that doesn't really make a lot of sense, if we're being honest. But I think the work I do has value and is meaningful and important, and I'm glad that I get the chance to do it. And I don't ever want to lose sight of how important it is that hundreds of thousands of you have joined with me to help make this happen. It's kind of an overwhelming number, really. So I don't know if this clarified anything. I think it might have just made things more confusing, but hopefully at least you have some idea of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'll leave it up to you to decide whether what I'm doing is good. And yeah, I left the gummy bears downstairs, so I can't throw them, but keep on rocking.